All right, and it looks like we are live. Hello, everybody. This is My Two Cents. Welcome back to my channel. This morning, when I first logged on to Twitter, I saw a hashtag I hadn't seen in a while, but that was rearing its ugly head again. Hashtag Fight for 15. Of course, that being the national movement to raise the federal minimum wage from $7.25 an hour to $15 an hour. And with the presidency of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, now imminent to be inaugurated this Wednesday, all the most ardent of the left wing are rising up again about how it's time for the government to step in and help out the common man and raise the minimum wage, because everyone, I mind you, everyone deserves to make a living wage. This is something I've talked about on my channel before. It has been debunked over and over again, but you know what? The heck with it. Why not debunk it one more time? So this article here is from CBS News. Author Kate Gibson writes, Biden minimum wage proposal could lift more than 1 million workers out of poverty. Of course, that assumes that the only reason people aren't making $15 right now, that being every hourly wage worker, is because every business in America, to include the small businesses that are just getting started, are just sitting on piles of gold, laughing and cackling and twirling their handlebar mustaches, refusing to give their workers what they deserve. Isn't that right? Yeah, let's see what Kate Gibson has to say here. President-elect Joe Biden's proposal to more than double the federal minimum wage would provide an urgently pay hike. I think urgently needed is what she meant to say there. Urgently pay hike. Yeah, urgently needed pay hike to millions of low-income workers and help stem inequality in the U.S., economists and labor advocates said. Yeah, if you think federal minimum wage is just going to double the income of all the current minimum wage workers, then you should not be calling yourself an economist. Labor advocates, maybe. Economists, yeah. If you're an economist, you definitely know better. In detailing his $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief proposal on Thursday, Mr. Biden called for raising the minimum wage to at least $15 an hour, saying no one working 40 hours a week should still be below the poverty line. You know, poverty line. It's funny how poverty line it keeps getting moved over the years. What exactly is the wage a person needs to make them below the poverty line? As we've talked about in previous videos, the poverty line in a given nation is basically, as far as many organizations measure it, they say that take the median income in any nation, and whoever's making less than half of that is below the poverty line. But of course, when you use metrics like that, then countries like Mexico end up having a lower poverty rate than the United States, even though the median income in Mexico is significantly lower than in the United States. Again, these kind of statements like this are extremely misleading. You've got to know exactly what they mean by poverty line. And when it comes to poverty, people who are living below the technical poverty line, as it is defined in the United States, have greater material wealth than most of the European nations that the leftist politicians love to praise as being so much more advanced than the United States. But again, the whole thing about minimum wage is this. If the government says to a business, you have to pay your employees this much, and the business wasn't paying that much before, it can only mean that the supply and demand curve has the actual median, the equilibrium, seriously, not median, equilibrium rate wage for that job is below what is below that specified minimum wage. Because if it were not, they'd already be paying that person more. All they are doing is telling the business you have to pay more than supply and demand has determined that wage really is worth, which means the business is either going to have to raise the price of the product or lay off workers. And in either case, fewer people end up with jobs. Raising the minimum wage, studies have consistently shown either the people it helps needed it the least, and the people it hurts the most are the ones that supposedly needed the help the most. A fatter paycheck could help many Americans regain their financial footing during the ongoing recovery, including quote-unquote essential workers such as grocery clerks and home health aides whose jobs have put them on the front lines of a pandemic, yet whose earnings are among the lowest. Every worker should be paid a $15 minimum wage, and essential frontline workers need hazard pay for the enormous health and safety risks they face during this pandemic, Mark Perrone, international president of the United Food and Commercial Workers, told CBS Money Watch in a statement. The union represents 1.3 million retail, grocery, and other workers. The incoming Biden administration's plans to hike pay also reflects a dramatically shifting political landscape, one that could finally bear fruit for low-paid workers and grassroots activists who have for years have pushed for better pay and working conditions as part of the influential Fight for 15 campaign. Yeah, go ahead and take a look at what happened in Seattle and what happened in New York City when they raised the minimum wage. Surprise, surprise, most of the workers that were fighting most avidly for it got laid off. Businesses do not magically have more money because government tells them they have to pay their workers more. And especially small businesses that are not run by these multi-billionaires that the Democrat Party loves to hate on the most are the ones that get hit the hardest. If they don't have the money to keep paying their workers, they can either raise prices, which typically is going to lower business and lower their profit margins, so they're not going to do that, or they can lay off workers and try to do more with less, which is usually what happens. And then, of course, unemployment rises and the people are suddenly crying about wanting laws that they shouldn't be fired for unjust cause. The only businesses that usually can afford to pay these high minimum wage are the huge Amazon, Google, the businesses that are run by these billionaires that people like AOC love to crap all over. It says it's immoral that businesses like this should have this much money. You should not be allowed to be a billionaire. And then ironically supporting policies that ensure that those businesses competition gets taken out of the market and they end up making even more money. I owe this to Six Hexenhammer for pointing it out, but the Democratic Party is the party of rich white men. They claim to be the party of the poor. They claim to be the party of the ethnic minority, and yet they support policies that always end up helping out the old white billionaires that they so supposedly despise. Give me a break. Same federal wage since 2009. The federal minimum wage, currently $7.25 an hour, hasn't budged since 2009, the longest period without an increase since it was passed in 1938, according to the U.S. Department of Labor. American workers were earning $7.25 an hour. Another 1.2 million earned even less. Tipped workers are among those exempt from the $7.25 minimum wage. And on that point, tipped workers typically make way more precisely because of that, because of tips. And if restaurants are forced to pay their waiting staff minimum wage, a raised minimum wage, typically they end up getting rid of tips altogether, and the workers end up making even less. I mean, this is just ridiculous. It's something I shouldn't have to keep talking about this over and over again, but the $15 minimum wage, whatever the minimum wage is, by raising it, it can only destroy jobs. If you're already making more than minimum wage, it means that supply and demand dictates that a business has determined you create more value than minimum wage. If you're getting paid less than what the proposed minimum wage is, it means the business has determined you're not creating enough value to merit more. And if by force they're told to raise the wage, their only real option typically is to lay you off and try to get your work done without you, leaving you unemployed and, increasing the poverty that minimum wage was supposed to get rid of. I'll give you a minute here while I have a sip of coffee. But anyways, minimum wage, the argument will not die. And ironically, the Democratic Party claims to be the party of the poor and downtrodden, but effectively, they are the party of the old rich white guys. So on that note, let's take a quick look at another article here, which is detailing more details about Biden's stimulus plan. So the New York Times here, a look at what's in Biden's $1.9 trillion stimulus plan by Jenna Smialek, January 14th, 2021. Okay, so first thing she says, let's put that headline number in context. That 1.9 trillion figure is a lot of money, to put it mildly. Congress passed a $900 billion relief program in December, and its package in March was also about $2 trillion. By way of comparison, the major financial crisis spending package, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, clocked in around $800 billion. Yeah, so basically she's trying to say this isn't that much money. Yeah, it's not that much money considering the fact that the U.S. government is nearly $30 trillion in debt and is running out of private investors who are wanting to buy treasury bills, such that basically we've adopted modern monetary theory at this point. Just print money until your troubles go away. Yeah, it always works out so well for nations that try it, like Weimar Germany and, of course, Venezuela. The administration is looking for $1,400 checks. President-elect Joe Biden is trying to make good on the Democrats' promise to send more money to households in the form of one-time checks. Its proposal would send out $1,400 per person for those under certain income thresholds, topping off the $600 checks that came as part of the December release package. Again, the U.S. government is $30 trillion in debt. The amount of private investors that actually want to purchase U.S. government debt at this point is extremely low. Where is that money coming from? It's being printed into existence by the Federal Reserve. And with the current economic shutdowns and more Americans out of work, again, we talked about on last week's stream, job numbers officially have actually started to go down again, even though they never really went up. So the amount of goods and services being produced is lower than it was before. If you send out more money, that's just going to be more money chasing the same scarce amount of goods and services, which means consumer prices are going to rise. Now, up to this point, those consumer prices have mostly been stock prices because all that money that's been printed is getting dumped into the stock market. But that can't continue forever, especially as production is down and consumer prices are going up, which we'll get to the point about how no one's talking about real purchasing power, which they should be. But let's continue. It also wants an unemployment insurance supplement of $400 a week. Mr. Biden is asking Congress to extend emergency unemployment insurance programs through the end of September. They are set to expire in mid-March while providing a $400 per week unemployment insurance supplement to help hard-hit workers. Yeah, we already know what's happened with unemployment insurance supplements, though. When the extra $600 of unemployment was passed, what happened? Well, a lot of workers realized, heck, I can make more money by staying at home and collecting unemployment than I can going to work. When you tell people they can make more money on unemployment than working, is it any surprise that people just decide to not work? Well, yeah, sure, it seems great for them for a while, but again, if they're not working, goods and services are not being produced. If goods and services are not being produced, then the things people actually want to buy with their money are not on the shelf. And when that happens, the amount of goods and services being produced is going down. The amount of money being printed is going up. Anyone who understands basic supply and demand knows only one thing can happen. Prices will shoot through the roof and we'll get the hyperinflation that we've been warning about all this time. They're not going to be able to keep it solely limited to the stock market anymore. Schools could get money to reopen. Great. Again, whether it's schools, whether it's any other kind of business, money printed out of thin air does not create more real resources. If we want to re-stimulate the economy, the government's got to stop printing money, allow the economy to reopen, and wait till the economy finds price levels that account for the amount of money that is in existence and allow supply and demand to take over again. That's going to be painful, but the longer you push it off, the worse it's going to be. A minimum wage could rise. And again, of course, minimum wage rises. That means more people than ever are going to get laid off and the economy is just going to go into a slump. States and localities could get more help. Same problem, public health. Again, doesn't matter if it's schools, if it's businesses, it's whatever. Government printing money does not create more real resources in the economy. The only people that these policies are helping is the huge corporations run by the billionaires that the Democratic Party supposedly hates so much. I mean, give me a break. But there is one more, there's something else I did want to share quick, and that is the original McDonald's menu from back in the 1940s. Let's take a look at that for a second. Everybody love going to McDonald's? I mean, I really don't. When it comes to fast food, I feel like there's better stuff out there. But McDonald's, you know, it's the cheap fast food restaurant. Well, they're right now they're running what, like the McDouble and small fries for $3 or whatever. What did McDonald's cost back in the 1940s when it originally came out? Taking a look at the McDonald's amazing menu. The pure beef hamburger, 15 cents. The tempting cheeseburger, 19 cents. Triple thick shakes, 20 cents. Golden French fries, 10 cents. Thirst quenching Coke, 10 cents. Root beer, 10 cents. Steaming hot coffee, 10 cents. Full flavor orange drink, which, for the record, so sad they got rid of that. Orange drink was McDonald's thing, and it is no more. 10 cents. And refreshing cold milk, 12 cents. So think about that. You could get a hamburger, fries, and a cup of coffee or any other drink for 35 cents back in the 1940s. When, of course, the minimum wage was far lower than it is now. But that goes to show what people aren't thinking about, again, is it's not just nominally what you're being paid. What's important is purchasing power, how much you can actually buy with the money you're being paid. When you raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, Small businesses go out of business. Other workers get laid off. The only people who benefit are the large corporations. But again, as even those large corporations, if they're now having to pay more to their workers than they were before in order to recoup those losses, they inevitably have to pass those costs on in consumer prices. The prices of consumer goods go up. So when all the dust settles and the new minimum wage is $15 an hour, it's not going to be long before they're arguing for a $30 minimum wage, because when consumer prices rise, even though nominally people are now making $15 an hour, that $15 purchases even less than they could make than they could back when they made $7.25, which is why if you're going to argue for the minimum wage, for goodness sake, just argue for $1 million minimum wage or $1 trillion minimum wage or an infinite minimum wage. Why stop there? The result is always going to be the same. It's if you just allow the market to work, supply and demand always brings the wage to equilibrium. And more importantly, the only way to actually increase the purchasing power for those low wage workers is to lower the cost of production. If businesses are allowed to set wages based on supply and demand, if they're looking for ways to produce the goods and services that everyone wants more efficiently, using less labor, less resources, it frees up labor, it frees up resources to be used for other endeavors. And even though people might lose their jobs in the short term, in the long term, everyone is wealthier. The things that were only affordable to the rich 10 years ago belong to the rank and file a day later. Well, not a day later, but you know what I mean. So anyways, this is Joe Biden is going to take office. I mean, I won't be surprised if he trips and falls and Harris is president the next day. But this is the discussion that's going to be in the mainstream media for the next week. We already know what's going to happen. It's happened time and time again, but it's been shown over and over again. It's not going to help. It's going to hurt the very people it's supposed to help, and it's going to help the very people that the Democratic Party are supposed to hate. So with that, let me go ahead and turn to the comment section here and see what y'all have to say about the $15 minimum wage. Lance Clemmings, lift more than 1 million workers out of poverty and straight into the unemployment line. Exactly. Mikhail the Stray Cat, yay for raising an utterly arbitrary number without trying to account for actual purchasing power received from an hour of labor. This will totally fix the problem. JC Armitage, obligatory U.S. government debt check, 27. So yeah, I said 30 trillion. It's not quite there, but right now, 27,802,630 million dollars plus, and it's only going to get higher when that $15 minimum wage is passed. Lance Clemmings says, I am poor, but I still have a higher standard of living than a medieval king, which is true. That is absolutely true. After all, I got internet, a heated room, and a memory foam mattress to lean on. Wesley B., but with increased minimum wage, would that also mean all products would also be increased in price? Example, if there was a burger that was $5, wouldn't it be increased to something like $15 or $16? Well, the answer is yes. In all practice, when business costs go up, they pass those costs on to the consumer. It could be through laying off more workers. It could be through raising the prices of their goods. Usually it's a combination of both, but in the end, the result is the same. The poorest, most low-skilled workers are the ones that end up losing their jobs, and everyone else has to pay more for what they are having. The very people who are supposed to benefit the most from the minimum wage rising are the ones that are hurt the most. The people who needed it the least are the only people who end up getting helped by the raised minimum wage are the ones who probably needed it the least. Night Shift 10,000. Government shouldn't we stop printing money and back it with commodities again? No. We just need to keep printing money with no backing. That'll make things better. Of course, that's exactly what they've been doing all this time. They've done, to be fair to the United States, they have done an excellent job of holding this out for a long time. You can even say the central bankers have done an excellent job of doing this. But the longer they hold off the inevitable collapse of the U.S. dollar, the worse it is going to be. Lance Clemmings most recently said, I should watch my profanity. I feel I might accidentally get 2 cents banned. Well, I didn't read the profanity, but I appreciate it. And on that note, we've all seen what's been happening with big tech censorship. I have an article on my website, my2centsvideos.com, that has the links to my BitChute channel, BitTube, Dailymotion, and library. It is only a matter of time, folks. This channel will eventually get censored. Thankfully, because I'm smaller, I've flown under the radar, but all my content is available on BitChute and Library, especially working to get the rest on other channels, on other platforms, I mean. If anybody's got any more comments they want me to address before cutting this stream, go ahead and put them in the chat now. Hope everybody is enjoying their Sunday. McToast says Amazon absorbs such incidents themselves. For example, they accept higher losses since it allows them to avoid taxes and invest into R&D, since nigh all their actual assets come about through the market. Indeed, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, all the other billionaires that the Democratic Party hates the most, that are so immoral, they sure do help them out quite a bit. Not that the Republicans are any better, but Democrats are more openly hypocritical. Republicans just say they're against Democratic policies, but vote for them anyways. Well, I guess that is hypocritical too. The Democrats are louder, let's say that. And on that note, just remember, folks, things are going to get worse before they get better. If you are not preparing for the coming collapse of the US dollar, now is the time to do it. It is not time to do it after it happens. So be strong, live free, and as always, that is my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth.